What's up guys, Matt
and Blake
from the Football Boots team, and what we will be looking at today are the biggest players in the world who have made the massive boot brand switch. Now me myself, I used to wear Adidas, but now I'm more onto Nike. Blake used to wear Nike, but now he's more onto Puma. And also let's look at David Beckham. He was one of the first players ever to make the boot brand switch. He started in Diodoras, moved on to Nike Premiers, and of course he finished up in the Adidas Predators, one of the biggest headline players of all time. So what we'll be looking at today are the players on the world market right now who have made the very controversial and high profile boot switch. So the first player that we will be looking at is not Juan Mata, although you can see him on your screen. He is actually wearing the players boots that we will be talking about, and that is Romelu Lukaku. And as you can see, he's got like size 14 feet, and for Mata, way too big. But looking at his previous seasons, he wore the Nike Hyven and Phantom 2, scored a lot of goals in them, and also the Mercurial Vapor 11, again, scoring a hatload of goals in Nike football boots. But what has he done very recently, Blake?
So he's been wearing the Nemesis 17 Plus 360 Agility. As well as that, he's been wearing the X17.1. As you can see, Mata is wearing those boots at the end of the 16-17 season. Lukaku was actually wearing the X16.1 leathers, so I think he probably will stick with the Nemesis for the 17-18 season.
Player number 2, and it is another recent transfer signing, Alexander Lacazette for Arsenal. Now, when I thought of Lacazette, I always think of him wearing the Adidas X15.1. This guy wore them for such a long time. He wore some red ones, he wore some special Swarovski ones. He also wore the X15.1 SL version quite a lot. But what he did last season was change from Adidas to who?
Nike. So he switched to the Nike Hyven range, wearing originally the Phantom 3 DF, the one with the collar, but at Arsenal you'll see him in the 17-18-7 wearing the low edition in a new unreleased colorway. And the other player that wears this boot in the Premier League is Harry Kane. So can he get more than 30 goals wearing these boots in the 17-18 season? Let's hope so.
Player number 3, and what a season this guy had last time around. Marco Verratti, some star performances in the Champions League last campaign, especially against the likes of Barcelona, probably the best player on the pitch. What was he wearing on his feet? The Puma Evo Touch Pro. He was probably one of Puma's biggest headline players, alongside the likes of Griezmann and Fabregas, but he has made a massive boot switch very recently into what?
So he's switched to the Nike Hyven 3. In terms of what model, is it the low or is it the high? It is the high DF model. So Lacazette's in the low, but Verratti's in the high edition. So a massive boot switch for Verratti.
Next up, we've got a player who I really admire. I love the way he plays his football, but he's also been getting some bad press recently because he looks like he's been putting on a little bit too much weight in pre-season when they were doing the Man United shirt releases. That is Henrik Mkhitaryan. Blake, you're a Man United fan, so what did he wear last year and also spotted in pre-season?
So he's one of Nike's biggest Mercurial Superfly 5 wearers. So he's been wearing that pretty much in the entire 16-17 season, but pre-season is a great time to test and try different boots, and he's actually switched brands to the Adidas X17.1. So like Lukaku, he's trying out the X17.1, not the Pure Speed. So the standard lace version of the X17 from Adidas. Will he stick with this boot or will he stick with his trusty Superflies? Who knows?
Now, this next play, in my opinion, is probably the most marketable footballer in the world of right now. We've got Paul Pogba. Every single boot brand wants his signature. They want him wearing their boots, wearing their trainers, wearing their clothes, just because they know so many kids out there will literally copy him. Blake, talk us through his timeline of boots.
So currently wearing the A17 Plus Pure Control. There was a long period where Pogba was wearing what he wants. So like Zlatan, Pogba does what he wants. And at the first time, we see the Magista Obra here. This is a Nike ID version of the Magista Obra first generation. He wore a lot of custom Nike ID versions at Juve, and then he switched to the A16 Plus Pure Control, having not signed for Adidas, so he's wearing the launch edition there. But then all of a sudden in March 2016, he officially signed his name on the Adidas 3 stripes, wearing the Shock Blue edition, and he's been pretty much Adidas's biggest ever signing in the past 3 years.
Well, Blake just said it. Zlatan does what Zlatan wants, and we have seen that in his boot choices over the last couple of seasons. For me, I know him so much for wearing the Nike Mercurial brand, but what we saw last year in the Premier League, signing for Man United with the Adidas kit, he started to wear some Adidas football boots as well. So Blake, break us down. What's he wore, and also what can you expect to see him wearing when he starts playing again?
To the start of last season, he was actually wearing the Vapor 10s in that Radiant Reveal edition, but then he quickly switched to the X16.1, the synthetic version, and the leather version, and then all of a sudden he was into the Vapor 11s at the end of last season. But what is he going to be wearing for next season? Who is he going to be playing for? Hopefully Manchester United, teaming up with Lukaku, both wearing Adidas football boots potentially. But again, in past seasons, there's a massive question mark on what Zlatan will actually wear on his feet.
So the next player that we will be looking at hasn't worn Adidas football boots his entire career. We've mentioned it in a previous video and it might shock some of our viewers out there, but Lionel Messi hasn't worn Adidas his entire career. Looking back to his early days at Barcelona and also Argentina, he actually laced up in Nike football boots, the T90s, the Vapors and also the Tiempos. What do you think about that?
So this is probably Adidas's biggest ever boot deal. So I think it was 2005 when Messi signed for Adidas. It was such a big deal back in the day because in 2005 Messi was the talk of the town and he still is the talk of the town. So he's been one of Adidas's biggest F50 wearers. So he's wearing the F50 at a 0 for such a long time. Then on to the Messi range with the 15.1 and the 16.1, and now on to the Nemesis. He's still Adidas's biggest player.
What a player we now have for you guys. Probably one of the most killer passes we've ever seen in the game, and that is Mesut Ozil. And he also has one of the biggest controversial boot switches of all time. Back at Real Madrid, he wore the Nike Mercurial Vapor football boots, but then he signed for Adidas. Now, the massive problem was that in his contract with Nike, Nike stated that they had the option to match any other brands offered to him, but he just literally signed for Adidas, and there was a massive suing case in court. So what is he wearing now going on from Nike?
So he is one of Adidas's biggest Pure Control wearers, so along with Pogba and Rakitic for the A16 Plus Pure Control. He pretty much debuted these boots. He was the headline player of these boots. He's currently wearing the A17 Plus Pure Control. But again, like Messi and Pogba, Ozil is one of Adidas's biggest players.
Now, so far in the video, what we've seen is a player making one singular boot switch, maybe something like Nike to Adidas, but what this next player has done has completely disregarded the rules of contracts, and that is Dani Alves. He's gone from Nike to Adidas, Nike, Adidas, and back into Nike. He's changed 5 times between the two brands. What boots has he worn over his career?
So pretty much at Sevilla, and when he joined Barcelona, he was a Nike Vapor wearer. He's worn the Vapors for a long time of his career. It's probably been his boot of choice in terms of his total number of boots he's worn. Then he switched to another pair of the Vapor Superflies, I think they were. Then all of a sudden in 2014, he was Adidas's biggest Nitrocharge 1.0 wearer. So he wore these boots at the World Cup. As you can see there, he's got the launch editions, but along with like someone like Javi Martinez, Daniel De Rossi, he was Adidas's biggest Nitrocharge wearer. Then all of a sudden he switched back to Nike with the Vapor 10 and with the Vapor 11. When the Vapor 11 was out, he still was stuck in the Vapor 10s. So similar to what Zlatan was doing, but having just joined PSG, who are Nike, and Brazil with Nike as well, it makes sense he sticks with the Vapor.
Now, our next player, when we're talking about clinical goal scorers, you probably don't get much better of an example than Sergio Aguero, and we all know he wears Puma's Evo Speed football boots. Now, he's been wearing the Puma boots for a long time now, but it wasn't that simple back when he was at Atletico. What did he wear then?
So he wore 4 boot silos by Nike. He wore the CDR 360s, as you can see there. He also wore the T90 and the Tiempo and a pair of Superflies. But then when he switched to Man City, he wore the Puma V1.11. So probably Puma's biggest ever player at the time. He wore the Everspeed 1s to the 1.2s to the 1.3s, then on to the SLs and the SLS, and now he's going to be wearing the Puma 1. But overall, Puma's biggest ever player was Sergio Aguero and still is.
We've just had one player going from Nike to Puma, but it doesn't stop there with that specific boot switch, because we've got another one. Cesc Fabregas, very strange boot career. You love the way he was at Barcelona strumming those passes around, but what's he been wearing throughout his career?
So strange boot career would sum Fabregas's boot choices up completely. So at Arsenal, when he was at Arsenal, he wore the Nike Tiempos. Then when he switched to Barcelona, he was one of the biggest CDR 360 Maestri headline wearers, along with Iniesta in the center of Barcelona midfield. But then he made one of the strangest boot switches I've ever seen. One of the trademark wearers for the CDR 360 Maestri, he switched to Puma's Powercat. So this is the leather version. He's wearing the Powercat while he was at Barcelona. Then he switched to Chelsea wearing the Evo Touch. So one of the strangest boot switches we have seen in world football.
So wrapping this video up, are we going to be seeing one of the biggest boot switches of all time? We've got Paulo Dybala. Massive player for the Superfly previously, but what he has been wearing in training recently has got massive question marks over which brand he will be representing next season. What is the situation?
So Dybala in Argentina training has switched to a blackout pair of X17 Plus Pure Speed. So going from a Nike Speed Solo to an Adidas Solo. I think it makes sense because Juve have their kits supplied by Adidas as well as Argentina. So Dybala into the X17 Plus Pure Speeds.
Dybala is the poll card question for today because it could be such headline news. Do you guys think he's going to be sticking in the Superfly, or is he going to make the change into the Pure Speed? So that's the poll question. So go ahead and vote for which boot you think he will be represented next season. But guys, that is today's video. All wrapped up. Some really controversials in this list. If we've forgotten any, then please let us know in the comment section below. But guys, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching as always.
We'll see you next time.